Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 52 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we're coming to you once again from the worldwide headquarters of GSM Services as we look forward to having some great discussions in the coming weeks and months. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We are highlighting another great organization this week as we highlight the Gaston Interfaith Trialogue. And with us today is the Reverend Dr. Joan Martin, who is a Presbyterian minister and the chaplain at Covenant Village, Rafat Ray Hammam from the Islamic Society of Gastonia, and Bill Gross from a Temple Manual, who is also retired from the health department. So Joan, Rafat, Bill, it's great to have you, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
So we're going to get right to it, and started with just the typical question we start with. Maybe start with you, Joan. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and anything you'd like to share.
I'm the chaplain at Covenant Village, which is a continuing care retirement community, and it is just a really, really exceptional place. And just so proud to be their chaplain. I've been there 12 years. And Stephen and I know each other from Rotary.
Yes.
And the reason I mention Covenant Village is because they'll pay for my mileage here if I do that. So, yeah, but I really do love Covenant, and it's a wonderful place. So that's it. That's enough about me.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Stephen, for having us
Sure.
today. My name is Rafat Ray Hammam. I'm from the Islamic Society of Gastonia. I own and operate Hammam Construction and Design in Gaston County, and I am a father of three and living in Belmont.
Very good. Bill, sir?
Well, I've lived here since March of 1988. Lived or worked here since March of 1988, and I just love being here. It's a wonderful community, and I have felt very comfortable and embraced by the community throughout that entire time.
Well, very good. Well, again, I appreciate just sharing a little bit about listeners kind of like to know where we're coming from. And so I'm going to throw out, with three of you here in the room, I'm going to throw out some questions and kind of first, because we probably have some listeners who don't really know what the Interfaith Trialogue is. So this is for whoever would like to answer, kind of what can you tell us about the history, the mission of the Interfaith Trialogue, and just kind of what is it for our listeners? I mean, I know a little bit about just from hearing Joan occasionally talk about it, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
Well, to begin with, we are a group of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And we strive to get together monthly, and we share our common books. We share the Torah, the Koran, and the Bible. And in fact, we had a meeting last night, and so it's been really, really meaningful. There's about 40 people that come to our meetings, and so we always have a group of folks. We take different turns to talk about the books, the sacred texts that we have. So that's really the basic mission of the Interfaith Trialogue, is to have a conversation between the three groups.
Okay. How long has the group been in existence? And
Yeah, we started in 2002 on the heels of September 11th, and we met until 2007, and then we ran out of energy. And then Joan showed up one day and said, what if we had a conversation like this? We told her that there was an organization in place, and with her help, we resurrected the Trialogue in 2010. So we've been operating continuously since then, with a couple of missed months here and there during COVID. And the other feature I'd like to point out is that the three religions that are represented on the Trialogue are all Abrahamic religions. They revere and venerate Abraham. So we have a common bond, and we all are all monotheistic religions. So there's a lot in common, and you'll hear about this, but broadly, our Bibles overlap, and a lot of our traditions and our stories overlap and have similarities. So when we meet, we explore those similarities and some differences, and it's always illuminating.
So typically, you mentioned, I think, John, you mentioned roughly 40 people. Typically, are they, who can come? Is it members of the group only, or do you typically have, religious people from our local communities, or just kind of, does that make sense? Good question.
Sure. What's unique about our group is everybody can participate and take part in understanding and trying to learn about the other faiths, and also we host ourselves, and we are holding the meetings in various location every month. Mm-hmm. So we could be in a church. The next month could be in a temple, okay. Emmanuel, or it could be in a mosque the following month. Mm-hmm. So everybody's interested in understanding about faith and learning about their neighbors' belief and traditions. They're welcome to do this. So.
Mm-hmm. We've also met in the YMCA and at the library. The key thing is that I call myself the facilitator, but it's really the keeper of the email list. So if you would like to get on the email list and find out where our meetings are each month, my email address is joancmartin2@gmail.com.
Okay.
And folks can contact me if they want to be on that list, and they're welcome to come. Everyone is welcome. We have a broad variety of participants every month, so they're welcome to come.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me add some of the topics that we've talked about and we have addressed. Maybe this would entice some of your listeners. A couple of months ago, we talked about Abraham and how we looked at Abraham in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, and in the Koran, and we shared almost an hour and a half of discussions regarding Abraham and how we share him as a figure in all three traditional faiths. This past, I think it was yesterday, our last meeting for June, we talked about Jacob and how we addressed about Jacob and how he influenced and how he took part of all the three faiths.
Mm-hmm. All right, so is that typical, or are you? So is it something that changes every month, or you have carryover from month to month on kind of what you're talking about? And
we do. We have a steering committee that we decide and pick out some of the topics that interest our participants, and we move from one topic to another. Recently, we took scriptures and we described what from various faiths, and we talked about them and addressed those. So we kind of move between topics as months go by.
So I'm sorry.
I was just going to add some of the topics have been really interesting, like food. We've talked about celebrations. We've talked about holidays. Family culture, family traditions. Just it's not just the sacred texts, but also just it's really neat. Some of the holidays that we don't share.
Yeah, I would guess. Again, I'm a Christian, but I would think, especially with my novice knowledge of, frankly, of Christianity, and then even less of other religions, is a lot of it about just understanding. And for me, I know a little bit about Judaism. I know a little bit about Muslims, but I just don't know. That's kind of the point, I would assume, isn't it? Is sharing and better understanding. Especially, obviously in 2002, I'm assuming that was the primary point, because that was a very, I don't know, to put it positive, it's been a very unique and unusual time, and not necessarily a good time when people are trying to understand others and what some of the things that were going on at the time. Are there any other, the question we typically ask is, can you talk about some of the initiatives, or maybe a better way is kind of the next question we kind of put out there is any impactful stories you can share about individuals or families, or just how the community has been impacted or anything any of the three of you can share related to that?
Well, we've got the Peace Walk. We've done 2
Okay.
of those.
I think I saw that online. Yep.
We're hoping to do a 3rd one this October. And that's been interesting, the folks that have participated in that, because we go to, 7 churches? And then the mosque. We wrap up at the mosque. We start at First Methodist downtown. It's about a 5-mile route. And we stop at these different churches along the way.
Okay.
And it's been wonderful. The hospitality, it's been surprising at times how hospitable they've been. We also have vans that go along for folks who can't. The last one we had, the first one we had was like 90-degree weather in July. We didn't choose well. So we had to have vans go along because not everybody could make the route. But it's been interesting to have this show and sign of solidarity. And we have a couple of banners that we carry and just go from these different places. The police have been, the sheriff's office in particular, has been really great about supporting us along the way and keeping us safe because, we realized when we were out on South New Hope Road that we were very vulnerable and anybody could drive by and take pot shots at us. Yeah. And so it's great to have the police there to support us. But most of all, it's a wonderful event. And then we end up at the mosque where they have a party for us, which is grand. I don't usually get to eat dates. And, yeah, that was really, really great. They had kind of an Abrahamic meal for us when we ended the walk.
So I appreciate you mentioning First Methodist because I am a member of First Methodist. So, and I said that is where I've heard about that before. I haven't participated myself, but I have heard about that being a member of First Methodist. So is that something that you are doing annually? How many times have you done that? And that's something that you plan to do?
We like to shoot annually or every 2 years.
Okay.
Because it really is impactful, and a lot of people can see who we are just doing their Saturday chores, driving around town. They can see it. And also it means a great deal to each of the individuals because we go to Christian, we start out at First Methodist, we stop at St. Stephen's, and then we go to the temple. And we have a wonderful rabbi friend, Dr. Charlie Brown, who played the organ for us, piano for us, and we blew on the shofar, the horn, the sheep's, what is that?
Ram's horn.
Ram's horn. Thank you. And it was a wonderful experience for everybody to be able to worship in these different spaces. And then finally, we go to First Presbyterian, we go to All Saints Episcopal, New Hope Baptist. I think I'm forgetting somebody.
The Lutheran Church.
Lutheran Church, Redeemer Lutheran. So, and then we wrap up at the mosque and have prayer and speeches and food, and it's a lovely day. It's really great event for everyone. So we have that initiative, and then we need to talk about Liz Pope too. If either you can talk about Dr. Pope.
Before we talk about Liz, I just want to say that when we started in 2002, it was really out of an intention to make peace.
Sure.
There was strong questioning and some quarters hatred of people who followed Islam.
Yep.
And we wanted to understand each other better so that no one would be under the gun, as it were. And so there was a lot of learning that we needed to do because I think all of us had misconceptions about each other. And how you engage that conversation is really a challenge. We were led by a young man who had moved here, I think from Georgia at that point. He was the director of faith formation at Queen of Apostles Church, and his name is Dennis Teal Fleming. And Dennis had done this in other communities where he'd lived, so he came in with a set of rules
right.
and processes and procedures, and we followed them. And he did a really good job of keeping us focused on the work we needed to do and also to be kind to each other. Mm-hmm. And over time, I think it's just become part of our culture. Mm-hmm. It's part of our fabric. Every once in a while, someone shows up who isn't familiar with it. You can just tell they don't quite fit in. They're perhaps a little strident in their work. So some years later, a young woman who was a doctoral student at the University of Georgia by the name of Liz Pope wanted to do her dissertation on interfaith transformation in adult education. And she found Dennis. And Dennis said, contact the folks in Gaston. And she did. And she wrote her dissertation largely about the work that we do. She interviewed several of us at length, and I've read most of her dissertation. It's exceptional. And she was able to derive some powerful insights about why we were succeeding. And she just got tenure a few months ago. She's a professor at the University of West Georgia in Carrollton. And she writes articles about us, and it wasn't anything we ever anticipated. It was a huge gift.
Oh, that's interesting, because I don't know that I've never heard that story personally. And I think we've discovered through 51, now 52 episodes as we recorded, there's a lot of, I don't know, really well-kept secrets in Gaston County. And this, hopefully after this, our 3 listeners will become aware of this. And that's my mom and my wife and my daughter. I'm not kidding. So what about, looking back, I know there was some time off for the organization, but not just a couple of years, but going back, I guess, 20 years now. What do you view as some of the, there's probably going to be some obvious answers, but some of the impact you've made, and I kind of tie that into this question that I really like is, why do you view Gaston County being a better place? Because the Trialogue is here.
Let me talk about you two in particular, because Ray and Bill have gone to great lengths to educate people, going to various, I can't even think of all the places you've been, church groups, schools, to talk about Islam. He and Sam Shakuri have been wonderful face of the mosque, and just seeing Ray, they can feel comfortable and know that Islam is not scary and it's not people with bombs, and so he and Sam, Bill too, and Mark Epstein, they've all just been wonderful advocates, wonderful ambassadors of their mosque and their temple, and I think you've changed a lot of minds in Gaston County about Judaism and Islam, those 4 men in particular. And we've received a lot of commendations for it as well. Tom Kager from the county commissioners had a day for the Interfaith Trialogue. We got our commendation and our Gaston County the medallion and things like that, and also have been recognized at the awards in January, Martin Luther King Jr. Award, the Unity Award.
Yep.
So we've been recognized that way too. So, those kinds of impacts and that kind of notoriety has helped a lot to further our mission, what we're trying to accomplish.
All right, so she just built y'all up pretty good there. How would you respond to that?
Certainly appreciate that. But to me, personally, what really the 20 years of relationship, of understanding, it really paved the road to understand and improve my knowledge of my own faith regarding Judaism and Christianity. Certainly, as a Muslim, you have to believe in Judaism and Christianity. And listening and having a friend at the Jewish temple in Gastonia, multiple friends, I feel like I'm understanding my own faith when they talk. I certainly learn great deal from the folks regarding our faith, and this is really what's unique about our group. We get that question a lot. What are you really getting out of this activities is really basically is to improve your own faith by researching and looking into your own faith and how you can be a better neighbor to understand your neighbor.
Well said.
Thank you.
I also think it removes misconceptions.
Sure.
Because people come and they learn about the three religions. They learn more about their religion and then the other two. And I think they're less likely to look at others who are different from them as bad. I think there's a human tendency to say, if you're not like me,
Sure,
something's wrong with you. And we sit and talk, and people realize, well, wait a minute, we have much more in common than we have in difference. And even though our stories are really different about the same people, I think the participants find it fascinating rather than off-putting. So, for example, Rafat was talking about the conversation we had about Abraham. In the Hebrew Bible, Abraham took his son Isaac as directed by God and was ready to kill him. And the angel stopped him at the last moment, and there was a ram in the thickets, and they sacrificed the ram. In Islam, it wasn't Isaac who was being sacrificed by Abraham, it was Ishmael. And so the first time I heard that, I was like, really?
Yeah, I've never heard that. So
How could that be? My Bible says this. And then we heard the explanation. And what I come away with, at least, is an understanding of how richly God can be interpreted and still be revered. So there's different pathways and stories, but the worship and the reverence that we all have for God is consistent. You want to say any more about that story? Because I think it's wonderful.
It's wonderful, and we do have many intersections to where we have a common denominator in regards to faith in the Old Testament and the New Testament regarding understanding our own faith, especially in Abraham, a story, and Jacob. Recently, we spoke about that, and Joseph is significant in the Quran and has a chapter. And if you read the chapter in the Quran, you'll find it very similar to that of the Old Testament, very close to understand. So we celebrate the moments of similarity. We challenge ourselves sometimes in differences regarding Ishmael and Isaac, but again, we conclude by trying to understand one another. That's what the unique about. Usually the conclusion, if we see a subject or topic that is not highlighted in one's faith book. So we celebrate the similarity, but we try to dig deeper in differences.
Yeah, one of my favorite, concepts, I guess. I think I first saw it when I read, I think it was Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think one of his was seek to understand before being understood. And boy, it took me a long time to get that one. I mean, when I was younger, of course, it's all about me, right? And I also, I think the world, it seems to me, the world we live in, there's so many things are translated by headlines and events, as opposed to really what's the underlying issue or opportunities we have. And to your point about, gosh, if we're different, then we must be bad. I mean, that's just look around. That's one reason I try to stay away from the news as much as possible. Everything is local, and what we're doing here, like what you guys are doing here, is really, for me, what matters. That's what we can control. It's not what's going on somewhere else that we really can control. So since going 20 years ago to now and looking ahead, I mean, what do you envision doing? What's the organization going to look like? What are you looking forward to do more of, or just how does that? What's the vision for you guys with this organization going forward?
I'm not sure we have a vision. we follow the Lord and be faithful and
okay.
meet as long as we can. I'm hopeful that there'll be others that come behind us that find this just as fascinating, from the temple and the mosque as well. I got to say, there are plenty of Christians in town, so I would imagine somebody would step forward to facilitate at some time.
Also, any initiatives or anything? I mean, just like this is something we would really like to do, to see happen, or is it a secret and you'd have to kill me if you tell me?
No, I don't think there's initiative, but
okay.
We'll definitely continue the path of peace, bring in peace and understanding to our part of the world. I was told one time by Dr. Mark Epstein, a really wonderful friend from Temple Emmanuel, we may not be able to change the world, he told me, but at least we work hard in improving this corner of the world we call home. And I think that is the core of our, hopefully, next 10 years. We will try to improve the understanding and build on that to create a relationship among all three faiths.
All right, so is there, I mean, a couple more questions, but is there anything specific I haven't asked or should have asked, or, because I'm far from a professional questioner or interviewer, especially when Joan tells me she's not going to answer some of the questions.
The thing I'd really like to convey is the level of trust and friendship that we have. When we started out, I contacted Bill. I had in my mind, I was hearing all this negative news about Islam and Muslims, and this was, 2010. And I contacted Bill, and 6 months later, he got back to me and met me at Bellacino's for lunch. And I will never forget that, because he's like, why you, this middle-class woman, what do you think you can offer us? And, I talked about just some of my experiences with Judaism and growing up with that. And I'll never forget, Bill asked me point blank, he said, things are fine now, but what if the tide turns? What if, you have to put your life on the line for your beliefs being my friend? And, I really had to think, and said, yeah, I would support you.
Yikes.
You mean that much to me, and I believe in this. And so I think I passed the test, because then he let me meet Ray. We went to another high-class place. We went to Olive Garden this time. And but we had a lot of suspicions. We had a lot of suspicions about each other at first. And it was funny, because the two guys, we were in a booth, and the two guys were on one side of the booth, and I was on the other. And
because they were scared of you, Joan.
I guess, yes. But I can honestly say, through the years, with being together, working together, having a common goal, that, we would go to the mat for each other. The friendships, the relationships have gotten so strong and so important. And, we really respect each other and love each other deeply, and honor one another's ways of worship. And, it's phenomenal. It's really been a great blessing to us. And we want to bless Gaston County as well with those relationships.
Bill, Rafat, anything to add to that?
Throughout the last 20 years, we did have some happy moments, and we certainly had some sad moments to where tragedies and atrocities had happened in our nation, and we found solitude with our one another. We came together collectively at the Temple Emmanuel when tragedy in Pittsburgh happened, and we thought that was needed and important to show our solidarity to the Jewish community living in our community. And we saw the same thing when atrocity happened in New Zealand with a couple of mosques that multiple people have died in act of hate and Islamophobia. We saw the exact same thing. We saw multiple people sending messages and standing with us in sadness, and that was an uplifting moments throughout the past multiple years.
There's a prayer in Hebrew. It's Hine Matovu Manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, and it's an important prayer for us because it says how pleasing and pleasant it is when neighbors live together in peace. And so I feel not only engaged with my friends, I feel like I'm fulfilling obligations to my own faith by doing this work. We're enjoined and, if not required, to find paths of peace to work with others and not make bad assumptions or draw bad conclusions. And when you put a face on someone or a group that you don't know and it's a friendly face, you're much more likely to give people the grace that my Christian friends talk about. And I think that's extraordinarily important and powerful.
Yeah, especially us Methodists like to talk about grace that we don't deserve, but it's there for us regardless. So I appreciate that, Bill. So this is a pretty, gosh, there's so much joy really in this discussion, even though it kind of feels a little different, because ultimately what brought this group together was not something, that was positive. But it sounds like you're making the best of it. In our community. Frankly, all communities could use, this type of bringing people together. Because ultimately, we have an orientation here most weeks when we have new team members come on. I talk for a few minutes about our core values, and I spend a few minutes talking about two of my favorite. It's not really our core values, but it's underlying what we try to accomplish here is empathy and compassion. And I really kind of focus a little more on that the last couple of years. It seems like during COVID and there's just less grace for each other, it seems like, and just less patience. And that compassion part, just be kind. It's not that hard, but it seems like some days it's hard to find that out there. So I appreciate what you guys are accomplished. So how would, I'm going to go to maybe one of the last questions real quick. Somebody wanted to get involved, find more information out about the organization. Where would they go? I know you shared the email. We'll make sure the email is in the our show notes. And so how would you, any other place they can go to find information, or is Joan the keeper of all things important?
That is true, Stephen. The keeper of all things important.
I'm sure there's a good reason for that as well.
I want to give a disclaimer first, because if you are interested in coming to one of our meetings, it is not an opportunity to proselytize.
Understood. Thank you. Yes.
We have had in the past folks to come and think that this is their great opportunity to talk about Jesus to people who've been lifelong Jews and Muslims, and that's not what we're about. And we are very polite, but we will ask you to leave. So
sure.
If you want to be a part of our group, you got to have an open heart and an open mind, and just to send me a message.
To sometimes listen before speaking as well.
Sometimes listen before speaking. In fact, that's one of our rules, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're a first-timer, just listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't interject. Don't just get the feel for what we're trying to accomplish, and we respect that. So, and should I give my address again?
Sure, that'd be great.
It's Joan C. Martin, that's JoanCmartin, and the number 2 @gmail.com.
So is there a set schedule for the meetings, or is it something that month to month y'all plan and then kind of get the word out to the Jones email group?
Yeah.
Okay.
Typically, we meet on the second Monday of every month. We met the third Monday of every month, but we kind of felt that it's a little bit more conducive to our group is to meet every second Monday of every month. So we meet regularly every month, unless otherwise
during Ramadan and Christmas.
Sure.
During
Okay.
Ramadan, those 2 months we do not meet, but the second Monday of every month. And our next meeting is going to be July 11th, I believe, and it's going to be at First United Methodist Church in fellowship hall. So, Stephen, you can attend that one because that's your church.
It is my church. Yes.
So, and we just met.
So what you're saying is I have no excuse now. I can't claim I don't know where it is.
And I see you writing it down.
I am writing that date
yeah.
down. Yes.
Yeah,
July
6:30 on the second Monday in July. We'll meet at FUMC. And last night we were at Eastside Church of the Nazarene.
Okay.
We go to First Presbyterian. I mean, we've been all over town. In 12 years, all over town.
All right. Anything else to add before I'm not going to ask all these questions that we typically ask, but since Joan said she was going to answer one of them, I'm going to at least ask one of them. This is what people really want to know about your friends, family, anybody you work with. This is what they really want to know about you guys. All right. So, matter of fact, you two guys can get off the hook, but Joan will have to answer.
Great.
So we're going again. This is a podcast about Gaston County, but I don't want to hold these gracious individuals too long. But I am going to ask a couple of questions about Gaston County because I think it is good for our listeners to hear about, especially if they decide to come to one of your meetings, they'll know a little bit more about you guys. So, Bill, I am going to start with you. Kind of, what is your favorite activity or thing to do here in Gaston County?
I like hiking.
Okay.
Yeah,
we got some great hiking here.
Some friends. We walk the Greenway and often Seven Oaks.
Oh yeah, that's a great section.
And Rafat walks with us. So the friendships we made in the Trialogue extend outside the Trialogue.
Oh, well, very good. Yeah. Rafat, what about you, sir?
Yes, outside walking with Bill and a few other friends, racquetball and watching soccer is definitely a favorite of my family and my children and I.
Yeah, both my girls played soccer, and actually one is still plays at Forest View High School. So yeah, and plays club soccer. So I've been a soccer dad for many years.
We're partial to South Point and Stuart Kramer. So
we won't hold that. We won't hold that against you, Joan.
I have to say I really love Crowder's Mountain.
Crowder's Mountain is terrific. Yes,
sure. Crowder's Mountain is really terrific. I love going to Webb Custom Kitchen. I hope Jim Marasco gives me a little kickback for that.
Okay.
And I also love our Rotary Club every Thursday.
Rotary's terrific, yeah.
Gaston Conference Center.
Yes.
So those are some of the fun things I love to do here in Gaston County.
All right, Joan, staying with you. Are you more of a mountain person or a beach person?
Probably the beaches, yeah.
Okay.
Prefer that. I love them both. My presbytery is headquartered in Morganton, and we have a whole bunch of churches in the mountains, so get to visit those.
Well, we live in a great place because we can relatively easily get to both.
Wonderful.
Rafat, what about you, sir?
I think we are definitely my family is a beach.
Okay.
But we do like and enjoy the proximity to the mountains and the skiing part.
Oh yeah.
In the wintertime.
It can be nice this time of year too when it's 100 degrees here. It might not be. It might not be there.
Absolutely.
But hot is good. I'm not going to complain about the heat with what I do. Bill, what about you?
I like the mountains. My wife likes the beach.
Oh.
So we stay home.
So you can't decide, huh? Okay, so I'm going to start with Bill on this one, and I've already been warned, but this is my question that I'm going to ask regardless. So, Bill, UNC Duke or NC State?
None of the above.
So is there an answer? Or is that?
I like Georgia Tech in the ACC.
Okay. You know what? Georgia Tech is an acceptable answer as long as it wasn't, NC State and Georgia Tech are very close type of schools to each other.
App State for us.
Okay. Actually, my daughter will be a senior in the fall at App State.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great.
And Joan?
Well, let me start by saying there are three really important men in my life. I have one brother, I have one nephew, and I have one husband, which is a good thing. And my brother is a graduate of Duke, his son, my nephew, Chapel Hill, and my husband, State. So I'd like to be like Switzerland and just be neutral.
So that's got to be the first person in 52 episodes She just did a clapping sound effect for you. So that is the first person who has basically cheated and said all three. So
or none.
I expect. I guess maybe I expected
That's
nothing
right, all
less.
three.
All right.
I'm neutral.
So this is actually my next favorite, almost my favorite question. But what is something that very few people know about you, Joan?
That I was a disc jockey. I was a DJ for 4 years at WKVR in Huntington, Pennsylvania, which was my college, Juniata College radio station.
So what kind of, is it kind of music or?
Album-oriented, rock and roll.
Oh, okay.
Mostly pretty heavy metals.
That's a thumbs up then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a guy of the late 70s and 80s for music, so.
And along with that, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I want to say that I am a recovering alcoholic, and I've been sober for 31 years.
Well, congratulations.
So those
Very
are
good.
a couple of small things that people don't know about me.
Applause.
Yes. What about you? I'm sorry.
A father of three, I have to keep up with three grown boys. So I do play soccer.
Oh, okay.
So that a lot of people may not aware of that. Not very good, but I try to keep up with.
Is that like a league here you play in, or is it just recreational?
Well,
or
we played, older folks kind of get together.
Okay, that's great.
40 and older, and I was one of the oldest. So
Okay, well,
but it was fun though.
good for you. Bill, anything?
I do worm composting.
That is no question. There's got to be some good sound effect for that. Okay, that is definitely a first for the Gaston's Great
You win,
podcast.
Bill, you win.
Yeah, I mean that could be a ding, ding, ding winner
I love
there. I'm not even sure what to say to that. So yeah, Bill wins.
Bill wins.
Bill wins that one. So this is for, I'll stick with you, Bill. Any book or besides the obvious ones, any book or something you would recommend for our listeners?
Two of my favorite books are Sometimes a Great Notion by Ken Kesey and Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig.
I have heard, actually, I've never read it, but I've heard of that book.
It's a great book.
Yeah. Sorry, I got to write these down because I'm always looking for my next book to put on my shelf that sits there until I can get to it. Sir?
For me, it would be Joseph chapter in the Quran. I would recommend just some of the listeners just to kind of flip through the words. I think
Okay.
you'll find a significant meaning of life.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll have to go along with Ray and just say the Koran, the Torah, the Bible, those. But I want to explain why. When I was in seminary for 4 years, I had to read 50 pages of theology or whatever it was every night. So I don't read for pleasure at all anymore.
Had your fill, huh?
Had my fill. But the Bible, always very important.
Knowing what you know now, Joan, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
It's going to get better. Just, calm down. Probably the best advice. Just calm down. Don't be so anxious, and things will all work out.
Yeah, I know my experience, the things that really seemed important when I was 20 really were not very important.
Right.
It just seemed like it at the time.
Work hard and continue the path of peace. I think
Amen.
that would be my reminder to myself, I suppose.
Okay, very good.
I'm
Bill?
going to agree with Joan. Just relax.
Yeah.
It'll fall in place.
Yeah, I have a 23 and a 21-year-old, so that is, they're going through that question right now, I guess. So I'm trying to help them with that so they don't, do the same dumb things that I did when I was 23 and 21. Okay, last question. This is it is a podcast about why Gaston's great. So, Bill, maybe stick with you on this last question. So, besides the Interfaith Trialogue, why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
I find the people to be kind and warm and accepting, and it just feels like home. It's hard to really put in words comfort, except when the air conditioner works in the summer.
That's terrific to hear.
Get that GSM plug
that's
in.
That's extremely important. Thank you. What about you?
I will follow that thread with Bill. I think the people, the topography, the area is very hospitable, and I'm very proud to call this part of the world home.
Thank you.
I've lived in 6 states, have had 21 addresses in my life, and I choose to live here because people are kind, open, loving. It's just been great. I met my husband here. I'm just so thankful that I don't live in a big city with traffic and pollution and huge crime. And Gastonia is really great. It's a really great place.
Well, thank you. And that is a common theme that we've heard. The people, and it feels just like it's a unique place. I mean, I've traveled enough and lived away when I was in college, and it's a nice place to live. I've raised my kids here, public schools here. It's been really a great experience. So, any last words or anything you guys can think of you want to share before we close this one out?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Well,
yeah,
very welcome.
It's a real treat.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
It's been good.
And I'd like to give a benediction, if I may, the one from Numbers. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Make the Lord make his face to shine upon you and to be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his peace.
Very good.
Amen.
I think that is a great way to end. So, guys, thank you very much, and I appreciate what you were doing. And maybe we'll maybe in 5 years it'll be episode number 522, and we'll have you back and to see what the progress has been. And again, this has been great. Thank you, guys. Thanks also to our listeners for taking time to listen to today's episode. Please spread the word if you can about the podcast, and please don't hesitate to contact us here at podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And apparently, giving us a good rating helps the podcast get noticed, so please do that if you can. Thanks again to Joan, Rafat, and Bill for being our guests today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Elizabeth King and Amy Anderson from GSM Services and edited here locally by the Sumner Group. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.